Karen, in the world of metaphysics, spirituality, and the paranormal, there's lots and lots of conspiracy theories, right? Now, we've done a pretty good job of staying away from most of those so we don't fall into that controversial water problems that people have.
Right.
But we can no longer, as of today, delay our conversation about things that make you go, You know why?
Why?
Because to help us breach this topic, we finally have someone who's an expert who can talk about stuff. We have the man who has all the answers to all the questions.
Every question.
And if he doesn't, he makes them up.
It sounds like you.
He does. We get along so great. He does this with the help of a couple of his friends. On top of things, we are also bringing another friend of ours who specializes in a little bit of chaos.
Ooh, I like that.
This one's going to be fun.
Sounds like it might be chaos here.
My name is Will.
And I'm Karen.
And unlike Mulder and Scully,
we both want to believe.
So we've embarked on a journey of discovery.
We've talked to people deeply entrenched in the spiritual and metaphysical world.
We've thrown ourselves into weird and wonderful experiences. I even joined a coven of witches.
And wait, you joined a coven?
Yep, all in the interest of finding something.
Anything.
That will prove that there's something beyond this physical,
three-dimensional world we all live in.
This is the Skeptic Metaphysicians.
Welcome to the Skeptic Metaphysicians. I'm Will.
And I'm Karen.
And before we introduce our guest, I want to introduce a special guest host that's kindly agreed to join us this time around. She's a voiceover actor and former radio gal who happens to also host the Keeping Up with Chaos podcast. Welcome, Jozlyn Rocki, to the show.
This is going to be so fun. Thank you.
I'm not sure if you know what you got yourself into, but yeah, we're going to say it's fun.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
So, well, I just have to point out that you said gal. People don't say gal anymore.
So just to make it clear, this was directly from her bio.
Oh,
she sent me the bio, and she calls herself a gal. So
okay, well, that's different.
Yeah.
If you're a self-titled gal, that's one thing.
Yeah.
Lady, chick, gal, I answer to all.
Jozlyn, tell us about your podcast real fast before we introduce Koji, because I know that a lot of people out there, just the name alone, Keeping Up with Chaos, brings up a lot of questions.
Yeah, it's a fun podcast, for entertainment, and it's all about just conversation, bringing on all different types of people, just to have a conversation and just sort of normalize chaos. So, and it's amongst friends. We bring on new friends, and we had you guys on, so it was like, it's just a fun podcast.
Yeah, I love how you say you normalize chaos. I think that's if there's ever a thing that we need to do more, it's normalize chaos. So thanks for the work that you're putting in. Thanks for your service.
Yeah, you're welcome.
All right. Now, our official guest is also a writer and a producer, but he's in Hollywood. His film and television projects have played on Netflix, Hulu, Amazon Prime, Peacock, Roku, you name it. It's been on it. Now, he's written 8 feature films that have been produced, including The Commando, a feature film starring Michael J. White and Mickey Rourke, and most importantly, he produces and hosts the Unofficial Official Story podcast with his co-hosts Jennifer Field and Dwayne Perkins. Welcome, Koji Steven Sakai, to the show.
Hello, how are you guys?
Doing great. I can't wait to talk to you about all things unofficially official.
And I look forward to talking to you all things unofficial official as well.
Cool. Now, your show is really fun, really interesting. A lot of conspiracy theories, a lot of all kinds of different, and not just conspiracy theories. That's not really fair to say. But to give you an example of the topics that you cover, the show that I was on, we discussed the possibility of Britney Spears being a secret agent for George H.W. Bush. If that gives you an idea about the topics on the show, right? And you've covered things like, are the Greys the best aliens because they're Asian, right? So you talk about all kinds of fun stuff, and really the whole plot, I guess, of the show is that you come up with different theories, and then amongst all of you, you decide what the real theory is, whether it's real or not. That's how you do it.
I love paranormal. I love true crime. I love conspiracies. I love all of the things, and I've listened to every single podcast that is related to. I watch all the TV and the movies, and the problem with all the shows is that they always do the same thing over and over and over, and they say the same facts over and over and over. And as you mentioned in my bio, I'm a writer and producer, and I thought I can come up with these theories about what really happened to these things, and it could be more fun because I'm just kind of making it up. So that's what we decided. We decided to get a group of people together who were into these kinds of things and just talk about these conspiracies and paranormal and true crime stuff, and then just make up our own stories about what really happened, and then vote and decide which one was the actual true story about what really happened.
I love that. I was just going to ask you how you came up with your stories, but you're making them up. I like it.
Well, we try to look around the facts of whatever the situation is. So we don't just totally make it up, but yeah, we try to figure out what the facts are. Then based on nothing else, we just create stories around it.
So even your guests, you have them come up with a theory behind it. And then now, of course, when I was on your show, it's easy for me to say I had the best theory just because,
I'm sorry. Am I laughing too loud?
Yeah, a little loud, Karen. A little loud. Yeah. So what got you into metaphysics and the paranormal, that kind of thing?
Well, I've always been really interested in all these things. But I think I've always come at it from a slightly different point of view than most people. I went to my first UFO convention when I was like 7 or 8 years old. I was always really into kind of those kinds of events and those kinds of places, but I always looked at it from a social kind of political framing as opposed to kind of just this paranormal and just looking at it from kind of an interesting side note kind of thing. So like for me, for example, when I look at like the 1950s and I study what happened then, they talk about, space brothers, space sisters, and they take you to space and you look out and you see like, they show you the world and say, you're messing it up. And then in the 60s, it became these gray aliens, right? And they're doing like anal probes and sexual experiments. And it's really tragic. And this is, in the 50s, it coincided with kind of peace and everything's kind of great. In the 60s, it was like the civil rights, Vietnam, all these things were happening. The women's movement was growing as well. And then now you look at kind of these abductions and you see that they're about people who are being abducted as our neighbors, right? These hybrid aliens are abducting people and they're taking them to the Dodger Stadium and asking them if this is what it's like to watch a baseball game, And so what that tells us now, really, to me, what's interesting is it tells us now that we're so afraid of our neighbors that they could actually be half alien hybrids, And to me, that's what's really interesting about the paranormal is it speaks to a lot about who we are as people and humanity and our society. And that's what I really like. I'm kind of agnostic. I don't discount everything. Nor do I believe in everything. And I enjoy kind of being in the middle there.
Now, do you think your neighbors are part aliens? Because I've walked down the street and I've questioned some of my neighbors before,
Everyone has that
What's
shifty
up with
neighbor.
That guy?
Yeah.
Sometimes I think I'm the alien. So, I don't know.
And we've talked about that on the show, right? The star seeds that say that they've come from different planets and things like that. So I think a lot of the stuff that's going on in the world nowadays, they say that the reptilian race is actually taking over our government, which is why we're in such a big mess because they're trying to fuck everything up or whatever.
Yeah.
Right.
And Mark Zuckerberg is allegedly a reptilian. So just
Right. And I also listened on your last podcast. I think you talked about Elon Musk being a reptilian, possibly.
Yes.
Yeah, I paid attention.
So they're smart, the reptilians.
Maybe.
You have to be smart to be able to muck things up as hardcore as they've mucked it up. But
if it's gotten out, then they haven't been that smart, right?
Oh, that's true. Unless they've been around for a really, really long time.
And even within the race, or within aliens, it's really interesting because there's a racial hierarchy. Like, so there's the Nordic aliens, which are like the Nordic looking, really tall, really good looking aliens, and they're always seen as the best and the ones that don't hurt you aliens. And then there's like the gray aliens, which are seen as Asian because they're small, they're hairless, they're kind of robotic. And this is a real theory. People actually think that aliens are descendants. They're hairless. Yeah. So it's really interesting to kind of see like a lot of these stereotypes and our projections being put onto kind of these other things that I think are interesting.
I do find it interesting that the Nordic ones, right, the ones that are the best looking ones and the tall, beautiful looking ones are like the Caucasian ones, and everything else that's akin to the minority races are little and withered and shriveled up and ugly and
and
so
doing bad
it does
things
say
to
a lot.
you. Yeah, and being traumatic. Yeah, it's always it's never good. No one sees a gray alien and says it's good.
I was going to say, do you believe in the shadow people, or or what is it? The Shadow Ranch that's out west. Oh,
Skinwalker.
Yes. The Skinwalker Ranch. Is that's connected to the aliens, correct?
Yeah. So I'm actually of the school of belief that everything's a tulpa. Have you guys ever heard of tulpas before?
I have not.
So tulpas are this is a Buddhist term where basically people put enough energy into something, and everyone thinks about it, talks about it, writes stories, makes movies. And if there's enough energy put in, it becomes real, right? So the Jewish tradition has something like this, right? The golems. But I really believe that the more energy everyone puts into these things, they become real. So, for example, Slender Man, 1999 was the first time that it appeared in an online contest, photo contest. And then after that, people literally believe they see him now. Mm-hmm. So how does that happen? It's because everyone's putting so much energy, so much thought, so much work, it becomes real. So that's, I tend to believe that like the Skinwalker Ranch, the shadow people, ghosts, a lot of things are like that we're putting so much energy and thought, because I do believe we're powerful as human beings and spiritual beings. And that, even aliens and all these things, I believe that Tulpa is usually the answer that I go for most paranormal things.
Yeah, it was curious because my brother's totally into Skinwalker Ranch, and he was saying that they're saying that it's like a portal, possibly to connect with and have conversations with possibly aliens or other life forms that are out there. But I totally see that, and with YouTube these days, I mean, the amount of information that kids get, and from a collective whole, I hear about Slendermans, I hear about all that stuff for my kids, and it's like they get a lot of information from that stuff, and they believe in it, and then it could become real, like what you're talking about.
Yeah,
the energy.
People see Bigfoot who are not crazy, but nobody finds evidence of Bigfoot. So how does that happen? It's either that they are crazy or that they do see something, right?
So we just interviewed someone who's an expert on Bigfoot. His take is very interesting.
Yeah,
it explains all of that.
It does explain it all away. So if you've not listened to our Bigfoot episode, you totally should, because it gives you all the answers. Mm-hmm. It leaves nothing to your imagination.
I find it so odd that we have a Bigfoot sighting. Well, it's called skunkfoot, I think, or skunk something in Florida. I'm like, why? If you're that hairy, why are you here? Like, that's just too hot down here to be a Bigfoot-like creature, Like, but it's a hot spot.
That's why they call it a skunkfoot, because you're so hairy, you're all sweaty and disgusting and smelly.
I showered.
You can smell them a while away.
Koji, what kind of stories are the ones that energize you the most? Like, what are the ones that you decide this is the one we're going to tackle on the show this week?
That's a good question. To me, it's the stuff that people haven't heard. As I was saying in a lot of these paranormal shows and podcasts, they always talk about the same stuff like Roswell or, those kinds of shows. So I wanted to cover topics that aren't as familiar. But one of the things I found in my show was that I'm not really a paranormal podcast. I'm more of a comedy podcast. And because if you're really a paranormal person, you're not listening to ours because we kind of make fun of it, even though I'm a believer. That's the irony of it. So kind of in the beginning, it was kind of just trying to find weird, random stuff. And then it became let's like talk about everything, because a lot of our audience aren't people that know about a lot of the things that everyone who actually listens to paranormal would. So like Skinwalker Ranch is definitely something we want to cover because if you listen to paranormal, you know about it. But if you don't, you're like, what the hell is Skinwalker Ranch? Right.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Right. It's Skinwalker Ranch, Dogman, right? All that kind of stuff. Those new cryptids that are coming out.
So you believe in paranormal, though? Like, you are a believer? Because I was just, I was trying to figure out if you are trying to make it but like that you believe in it and you're proving it right, or you don't believe in it and you're proving that it's not real, Because I don't know about you, but sometimes I have like this glow earth ball in my kid's bathroom, and it's fine. And then someone takes a shower in there and it starts, going all glitchy. And I'm like, oh my God, there's a ghost in here. I'm like, no, it's just the steam, messing with the glow ball. But I mean, you really do believe? Because I can talk myself right out of it.
Well, I think I'm agnostic. So I don't believe just wholeheartedly, kind of over the deep end, but I'm also not total skeptic, like nothing could ever happen and nothing is real. So, I believe that aliens could exist. I don't know if they visit or not, but I could see them visiting, For ghosts, I definitely believe in ghosts more than I do in a lot of the cryptids. I have sometimes a hard time trouble. I mean, sorry to your former guest about Bigfoot, but sometimes it's harder for me to believe some of these cryptids. Some of these other stuff that I find interesting and I always want to find out more. So I would say, though, that, if I had to lean one way, I probably believe more than I don't believe, because why would I listen to podcasts? Why would I write horror stories if I didn't believe on some level some of this stuff?
So of all of your interviews and your stories and these conspiracy theories, is there one in particular that's a favorite or that's been most interesting or fun for you guys to talk about?
Britney Spears and agents. Yeah.
No, I was asking you, Will.
Oh, sorry. Well, I'm sure that's gonna be his answer anyway. But go ahead.
Yeah,
Go ahead, go ahead.
that was definitely going to be my answer. But now I have to quickly think of a new answer. No, all of them. I mean, honestly, all of them have been really interesting to me. Though the one that really hit home the most was actually our 9/11 episode, which we didn't have a special guest. It was just me, Dwayne, and Jennifer. And the reason that was the most interesting was that Dwayne, my co-host, he's a really wonderful comedian. He was talking to me about how he believed these conspiracies about 9/11, and it blew my mind because I'm totally not a 9/11 truther. And I thought that pretty much everyone around me wasn't either. So it was such a shocking moment to, in the middle of the episode to be like, wait, what? You believe this? You believe all this stuff? And it was just kind of shocking to know that, somebody I've known Dwayne for maybe 10, 15 years. And then to find out on air that, he believes in a lot of this stuff. Yeah, he's not. I mean, I'm not saying he's crazy. Don't worry. But just to find out that he's entertaining these things because he did, like, for example, he doesn't entertain that Britney Spears is a government agent for the CIA and George Bush, right? But he did.
Doesn't?
So that was probably one of the most interesting episodes for myself.
For the people who don't know, can you give us some idea what these conspiracies, 9/11 conspiracies that Dwayne believes in, entail?
Yeah, so there's a lot of conspiracies about 9/11, and they say 9/11 is the beginning of a lot of kind of the QAnon and the flat Earth thing that came back. A lot of that was like kind of the beginning of that. A lot of people distrusting the government. So there's a lot of conspiracies. There's a conspiracy that first of all, there were no planes like that crashed into anything. That's like a kind of a first conspiracy. There's other conspiracies. The United States government knew about the planes that were going to happen and didn't do anything to stop it. There's another one that the United States government is the one that funded it and did it. And probably the most persistent one is that Building 7, which is a small building, not the first two World Trade Centers that we saw on TV. The seventh building fell, and a lot of people think that was self-demolished by the government to bring the buildings down, or all the buildings down, and that was the proof that the planes didn't hit Building 7. So why did it go down? Is kind of this proof. And so Dwayne, I believe, was entertaining the notion that the United States government brought down the buildings on their own.
I would assume that's because they wanted to go into Iraq and get control of all the oil fields and all. And really, the other conspiracy that I heard about it is that Cheney's company, they wanted to go in there and make all this money on the reconstruction of Iraq after the invasion. So now I will say,
and also the Patriot Act as well, right?
Right. I will say I was in a control room in a newsroom when 9/11 happened, and as I watched the plane hit the second tower, so I know for a fact, Dwayne, that there was a plane because I saw it. I watched it myself with my own eyes.
Actually, you don't know this, but it was on the Sony lot. It was all part of Quentin Tarantino actually shot the movie that we watched on TV.
I thought it seemed a little wonky, a little softer on the edges.
You saw that string on the plane.
That seemed like they did the original Star Trek in, right?
Exactly.
But
I think they were covering up the alien invasion that was coming. Yeah, or the zombies. I know you like zombies.
I do love zombies. One of the things about conspiracies that I find really interesting is that, I'm much less believing of conspiracies than I believe in kind of the paranormal stuff. But the reason, to me, the conspiracies are really interesting is that we humans want to have an explanation for all bad things happening. We want a person to blame. We want a reason for things, whereas usually it's just a lot of really bad things happened all at one time, and kind of in a series of bad events, and it becomes really bad. And I think that that's most likely because we all know that if you tell one person something, that it's no longer a secret. So to think of like how big a conspiracy would have to be in order for the United States government to bring down buildings of that size and do it without it ever truly getting out, would be crazy, especially nowadays, right?
And yet they've been doing it with the evidence of the UFO's existence for years and decades, right? So you just never know.
Man never did make it to the moon.
That's right. I heard that. Yeah, that was also on the same Sony lot, actually.
Yes,
yes it was. It was.
Now, having been in that same newsroom, I did see some things that made me go, right? And I'm not an expert in forensics or explosives or anything like that, but the towers did collapse really strangely. As I'm watching, the entire newsroom is in complete silence watching the tower collapse in on itself the way it did. It was very strange. It was almost as if there were explosives set inside the building. I can't confirm or nor deny that, but it was strange, which is why I can see why some people might think, well, maybe there's some foul play here, especially because Cheney's company stood to make a lot of money going into reconstruct Iraq.
Yeah. Well, I mean, disaster capitalism is real, right?
Mm.
The whole idea that people make a ton of money on disasters, like the companies that made a ton of money after Katrina, they made a ton of money after 9/11, all those kinds of things. I mean, there's definitely money to be made for sure.
So then, would you say that that's your favorite conspiracy theory? I know it's your favorite episode, but is there a conspiracy theory that you find even more intriguing than that one?
Have you guys ever heard of the Betty and Barney Hill case?
No.
It sounds awfully familiar. Definitely ringing
So
a
in the
bell.
early 1960s, they were an interracial couple coming back from a unscheduled vacation to Niagara Falls. As they were driving, a UFO was allegedly following them. And then they got out. He tried to shoot it, of course, because that's what you do. And then they eventually got taken. And then, or they both got taken. They both were abducted. It's really the first abduction case that people talk about. When you think of modern abductions, you generally thinking of what you heard from the Betty and Barney Hill case, but people don't know it. I find it really, really fascinating. That was actually the genesis of the Unofficial Official Story, because my first thought when I first heard it was they were trying to cover up their interracial relationship by talking about UFOs, and that people would stop talking about them about being interracial and start talking about them being UFOs. The crazy thing is, when I was doing research for the show, that was one of the theories that people have online. That it was a cover up because they were an interracial couple in the 1960s, when obviously it was sometimes illegal to be interracial.
Yeah.
But
I have heard of them before, and probably on another show, and I did hear that same conspiracy theory that they were trying to cover up their forbidden love.
Because if you listen, you could actually hear their hypnosis, and it's really, really fascinating. I mean, if you've never heard their hypnosis sessions where they're recounting it, it's really fascinating.
But they did, the interesting thing is they did it separately, right? They were hypnotized separately, and they had the same stories, so it just makes it that much more interesting, because they had to have really talked each other into, okay, this is what we're going to say.
Yeah. I mean, there was a lot of weird things, like the clock, their watches stopped at the same time. They had the same amount of missing time and all these things. So it was to me, like that's like one of the most interesting cases to me in terms of the UFO, because people usually think of Roswell, but Roswell was just a plane crash, right? Or a balloon crash, whatever. If you want the official story.
I don't know. I saw those little bodies.
Oh, actually, that's interesting. Do you know that people think that it's actually, okay, so there's two conspiracies I love about Roswell. One is that they were secretly special needs people from Russia, the Soviet Union. Have you ever heard of that?
No, I've not heard that one.
Okay, so this is where the theory comes from. So allegedly, Joseph Stalin heard what happened in America after the War of the Worlds broadcast. And he's like, oh my God, we should cause chaos. What if we sent aliens to them? And so he put them on a balloon. He put special needs people on a balloon and put them and crashed them into New Mexico desert, thinking that's going to cause riots everywhere. So that's one theory. The other theory is that they were little Japanese soldiers who got lost in the jet stream, and then they crashed. The Japanese one actually has some merit in that. In the World War II, they did send these balloons, these large balloons called fugu balloons, and they were dropping bombs from really high. They dropped a bomb in Oregon. So there were balloons, but this was, that was 1943, 44, not 1945 in New Mexico. So there's a difference. But I always find, there's so many conspiracies. We could talk about conspiracies all day for every single case.
Yeah, oh my gosh.
Totally.
You mean to tell me there was a Japanese balloon that came over Oregon and dropped bombs?
Yeah, there's a document. There's documentaries, and it's proof. It's called Fugu, Fugu, and there are these balloons. And I think, don't quote me on this, I believe someone was killed by one of the balloons, but it was it was such a terrible weapon because it. You had no control over where the balloon goes, and you're kind of stuck really high. It's it wasn't it was kind of a desperation move.
Now, is there one conspiracy theory that's the most ridiculous one in your opinion?
Actually, you know what? Before you answer that, let's take a break and we'll be right back.
Now, is there one conspiracy theory that's the most ridiculous one in your opinion? I mean, for me, I'm thinking the flat earthers, but that's just me because and I'm like, you're not sailing off you're not falling off the end when you're on a boat.
Just get on the fugu balloons and you're going to see that it's not a flat earth.
There's so many, I think what's interesting to me, one of the most interesting conspiracies are out every major politician, major actor, musician, they're all aliens, right? They're all reptilians or they're all robots. If you look hard enough, you can find any celebrity and put robot next to their name, and then you'll find somebody talking about how they're a robot or find out how they're they're a reptilian alien. So I think all those are super, super fascinating to me. But the flat Earth, the interesting thing about the flat Earth is we think flat Earth is a modern thing. It actually started in the 1800s and has kind of gone up and down.
I mean, I kind of understand it better then than I do now.
No, they already knew then that was a globe too. So
yeah,
as ridiculous back then as it is now.
But you don't have like satellites and stuff that kind of prove that you're, so I can understand it a little better. Nowadays, if you still believe the Earth is flat, then wow. Yeah. I'm not anyone who's listening who believes that the Earth is flat. I fully support your belief system, and you're welcome to believe anything you want. I just don't see how. I love to. In fact, if you're out there and you believe that Earth is flat and you want to come on the show and talk about it, I would love to have you, because I can't imagine what evidence you have or what thought process you have that will make you think that. So please reach out to us if you're interested in that.
Well, and what's interesting about
I was going to say you're a skeptic of the flat earthers then, apparently. Like, yeah.
Yes.
For sure.
Yes.
For sure.
Well, what's interesting about the flat earthers are all the conspiracies is that it's very much like a cult in that, you get the more you talk about something, the more you get separated from your family and friends, right? And then all of a sudden you only talk to the people within your group, which is AKA cult. So it's the same thing for QAnon, flat earthers. Like if you go on Facebook and say, I'm a flat earther, you'll lose like a lot of friends. And then eventually if you keep posting it, no, you will. And I mean, there's a phenomenon where they talk about flat earth Thanksgiving because they're no longer invited to their relatives' houses or children's houses. And so they spend the Thanksgiving by themselves, and they share pictures of their Thanksgiving at home because they're by themselves. And, that's like a very common, because I mean, if you think about it, like, if you go to Thanksgiving and the person is talking to you about, anti-globe conspiracies, after a while, you're like, can we not talk about this?
I mean,
and then you get annoyed. And then,
to the Americas, they didn't fall off, and that's why they have Thanksgiving. That's just so ironic.
They made it.
No,
they made it the land.
They were still on the flat plane.
Oh.
It was just one really long plane,
a really long flat plane
with ice on the edges of it.
Oh, it's ice.
Yeah, it's ice. Yeah.
Okay. See, I never knew that there was ice. And now I'm thinking of, what was it, Game of Thrones, the ice wall,
right?
Sort of thing.
The North Wall, whatever. Yeah.
When you were talking about celebrities and being robots or aliens, like I think of time travel. My kids always believe that there's like these celebrities that have time traveled. Do you believe in that, or is that also like kind of a conspiracy type thing?
Oh, that's all a conspiracy. But Elon Musk allegedly was a World War I pilot, and there's a picture of him allegedly as a World War I pilot. The thing was that I thought he totally looked alike, and that was really shocking that I thought they looked exactly alike. But then my co-host said I was racist because not all Caucasian people look alike. But to me, they totally looked alike, and I could see them being the same people. But my co-host did not believe it.
Now I'm gonna have to go look at that picture.
I know.
Yeah.
But you do hear about people that pictures where a guy has like a digital watch on way back in time and things like that.
Photoshop.
Photoshop. At least cough when you're doing it.
Oh, sorry.
Well, like they'll always say things like, how can the pyramids be built so long ago? Like with that kind of technology, you're like, well, they weren't stupid back then. They could figure out stuff too.
The minions,
and
the
aliens
minions
helped
did
them.
it.
I just got back from doing a shoot at the Edgar Cayce ARE Institute here, and he was just talking about when he was channeling, he knows how the pyramids were built, and it's all in the readings. So if you really want to know, check it out.
Interesting.
Check out Edgar Cayce. Yeah. Now, one conspiracy theory that I'm not sure if it's a conspiracy theory, but one theory, one paranormal thing that you used to hear about all the time, you don't hear about anymore at all. Like I haven't heard a thing about it in decades, is the Bermuda Triangle. Do you remember that?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
What happened to that? Did it just like no longer become a triangle or something?
It turned into a circle.
Well, I think part of it is that there's not as much ship travel as there used to be, right?
But it was
even though I know
too,
planes go
right?
down too, but
yeah,
nobody really believes it. But the interesting thing, there is a on the opposite side of the planet. So if you go through the planet on the opposite side, there's the Asian Bermuda Triangle. So there's
Is there really?
Yeah, there's another Bermuda Triangle.
You mean if you go along the straight, long, flat line to the other side?
No, you have to go through. It's like on the other side of the globe.
It's flat ice. Flat ice.
Yeah.
Assuming
Oh, yeah. Sorry. Yeah.
Wait. On the other side
that's not
of the
a
ice.
globe. It's a flat plane. I'm sorry. Yeah.
But that was one of my favorite stories because I grew up in Puerto Rico. So I was right on the triangle. And whenever we flew from Puerto Rico to Miami, we flew over the Bermuda Triangle, and it was all exciting. It's like, are we going to make it? Is this the time when we find out what's happening in the Bermuda Triangle? And then radio silence, like total radio silence. I haven't heard anything about it at all.
I think they've done studies where it's not more. There's that area doesn't get more plane crashes or missing boats than anywhere else statistically. I just think that there's more press on the cases that have gone there, because there's famous cases of like pilots going missing, and we hear the pilots going missing. Yeah. So there's a lot of things like that.
Every party needs a pooper.
I thought that area was connected to aliens. Like there might be like an alien ship buried deep down in there, right? And it's like then they are coming and going and land. It's like a landing pad or something. I don't know.
Well, the new theory now is that the whole hollow Earth thing. Right,
yeah.
There are portals inside in places in the water that UFOs are coming in and out of. But then apparently there's this whole you go into these caves and there's a whole subterranean world.
I've seen that movie. It's called Godzilla and King Kong.
Well, yeah, yeah, that's where Godzilla and Mothra came from. But we can go down this massive rabbit hole now. But there's even talk about a catastrophic event that's coming in a couple 5-10 years or something like that, and the government is actually building out these cities, subterranean cities that are going to house them, so that's how they're going to survive the cataclysm. They're not telling anybody because they can't fit everybody underneath it. So I mean, there's all kinds of stuff that you can look into.
Can I just say that in a future society, they definitely need screenwriters and producers. So,
right.
So somebody like myself, I'm not going to say somebody, somebody like me would be perfect for such a place. So if anybody's listening,
so Will,
and my family too, my dog, my son, we're all needed, right?
Absolutely, totally. What I think you're talking about is a zombie apocalypse. That's what I think you're talking about. That it's going to really happen. That we need to be saved from. All the humans are going to have to we're going to have to hide someplace. And that could be another conspiracy theory.
It could be.
Well, yeah, for sure. Yeah, for sure. But I think this has something to do with the sun going nova or something like that. But I also heard along the same lines that this is why so many alien abductions are starting to ramp up because first and foremost, we've talked to people who say there are hundreds of different alien races. There's a whole galactic federation that is watching over us, and they're just poised, waiting that if we can't ascend ourselves and help ourselves, and they're gonna at the last minute they're gonna come in and grab us and help us out. Have you heard about that?
Yeah,
no,
yeah,
me?
Definitely. There's always been that element of, especially in the 1950s. There's always been this element of kind of saving the world, saving the Earth, saving us from ourselves. Right. Generally, a lot of in the past, it was the Space Brothers and Space Sisters that they're here to help us, that they're here to make sure that we don't destroy ourselves with nuclear weapons. I mean, there's a lot of similarity. There's a lot of cases with aliens and nuclear sites, right, where they couldn't, their UFOs flying around and they couldn't do anything about it, and all the systems go down and things like that. But yeah, I think that there's always been that element of people who believe that the UFOs are good. But my personal belief is I remember what happened during colonization, in Americas. And for me, if I saw an alien, I assume it's going to be bad, because usually when you have a higher life form and a lower life form, it usually doesn't end well for the lower life form. And
unless you're a cockroach,
just being a cockroach, just being like a Native American is already tells me exactly how it would be for us. So we'd have to figure out how to be a cockroach as opposed to a human.
Right. No, that's a great point. I mean, I got to ask, because you're coming at this from here's the explanation behind all this stuff. And that's awesome. I relate a lot, because that's exactly how I was 3 years ago or 2 years ago, whenever we started the show, in a lot of ways. Are you looking for something that's going to surprise you that you can't explain, or are you just to the point where you feel you're going to find an explanation for everything?
No. One of the cliches with paranormal stuff is that when you look into the paranormal looks back at you. So I'm waiting for that time for the paranormal to look back at me. You know, I mean, I've had like paranormal experiences, or I've been around that kind of experience. So it's not like I don't believe. Like, for example, one of the stories from my life is that when my dad passed away, my mom and my dad used to talk about how when one of them passed, they'll tell the other they'll be okay. And so, you know, when my mom came home once, she was really devastated. She came home and then she smelled incense in her room when she hadn't burned any incense for a long time. And for those who don't know, Asians, Buddhists believe incense is the way you get from the spiritual realm to our realm. And so she took that as a sign, and I smelled the incense too. And we don't burn incense regularly, so it felt like a very like real experience, you know. Or other times when, you know, you feel connected to people. Like I knew when my dad got sick when I was young, I knew that it happened, even though I was far away and I had not heard about it. So, you know, there are experiences, and I felt like I think I've seen ghosts or been around ghosts, but you know, I just want to, in terms of like most of these stories for me, it's about that political, social kind of what it says about us as humans, because stories are about us, and they tell us about who we are. And as a storyteller, that's what's important to me.
So then what about something a little bit more esoteric, like reincarnation? Do you buy that?
Those are some of my favorite stories about the children who know so much, right? And they know so much about, like, they have Babe Ruth's swing or whatever. There's a kid who had a perfect swing as everybody else. You know, and a lot of the Asian religions have reincarnation. So I could be convinced that reincarnation could work, you know. I'm not against it. I think it's as valid as anything else.
And then what, angelic beings and spirituality, things like that in your wheelhouse, or no, out of it?
I've always had a strong faith, not in one religion, but a strong faith in general. So I do believe, you know, and I think that's probably where the paranormal comes from, is that I believe that things exist, even if I don't see it. So, you know, whether it's God or whoever, it's something that I definitely have a strong belief in. I just don't know if it's, you know, a certain religion or one religion versus another religion. And again, even for religion, to me, it's about what it says about who we are, you know, and the rules and laws that they make. It says a lot about what we believe about ourselves and what kind of people we could become.
Well, I absolutely love your show. I had such a great time being on it. I love listening to it because you guys literally make me laugh out loud every time I listen to your show. And I know you mentioned earlier that the people that listen to your show aren't into that kind of thing because you make fun of it. I'm here to tell you that's not true, because I'm into that kind of stuff and still love your show. So just don't count yourself out. There's people out there who do have a sense of humor who can take it. So it's all good.
Yeah. I was talking with someone the other day and kind of telling him some of the stuff that I believe in. And I'm like, oh my God, I sound like a lunatic. You know, like if you don't think I'm crazy, then, you know, I'm not telling you this is the truth, because I was sounding like a crazy person. Yeah. But that's part of the fun of it too.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think what makes paranormal fun is that there is no answers, right? Yeah. Whether it's right or wrong. And I think that's where a lot of people go wrong, is that it's like, it's either completely 100% true. You have to believe every single conspiracy and every single thing, or everything is completely wrong and nothing could be real. And my philosophy is like, I don't know. I don't know if it's real. I don't know if it's not real. How do I know?
You get to pick and choose.
for me, I've got to wrap my head around it. Could it be? How could it possibly be plausible? And I got to tell you, I say it all the time on the show. Quantum mechanics changes everything. It's a game changer. It's suddenly anything's possible. So it's a little bit more difficult to discount stuff unless you bring Koji on the show and then he explains it for you.
It all comes down to Britney Spears.
And as a writer, you know, one of the things I know that the real life is always weirder than the stuff that you may make up. And because I teach screenwriting at a couple colleges, and there's always that student they write the paper or the script, and then the note is that this couldn't happen. And then that person's number one comeback is, this happened to me. This is my life. You know, then it becomes really uncomfortable.
This is a real story.
You ask the kids these days, if you've watched The Simpsons, everything that is on The Simpsons show has come true in real life, right? So if you're a screenwriter or in that whole world, sometimes art happens in real life, or art depicts life.
We talked about time travel a little earlier on. There's a theory that Matt Groening, who created The Simpsons, is a time traveler. And that's how he's gotten all that stuff out there.
Makes sense. Makes sense.
Yeah.
I mean, I do believe that there's like a consciousness, right? Like once you put it out there, all of a sudden it gets picked up. I mean, it's like why geometry was created in Americas and Europe and Asia around the same time, right? Or there's these discoveries at the same time, and it has to be. It can't be that we all discovered at the same time randomly. I definitely believe that there's something out there. So as a writer, as a creative, when we put it out there, all of a sudden it could happen.
I have a quick question. Why zombies? Like, what is the love of zombies ripping and guts? And, you know, like, I know that there's romance behind it. And I know you write books centered around zombies. And I think it's cool, but I'm just curious because it's like, I'm a vampire kind of person. So not really zombie kind of person. So sorry, but
I think it's the survival thing. It's just a matter of wanting, like, whether I could survive or not, and being really into kind of that idea of being able to like have a horde of people, and can we hole up in our house, and can we survive this apocalypse, this zombie apocalypse? And what I say to my son and everybody, if anybody takes anything from anything I said today, this is it. In any kind of world changing event, the number one way to survive is having a will to survive. Is that you want to survive. There's enough food, water, shelter in the market. Like, me and Will, we could live in the Vons down the street, the Safeway down the street for 12 years on the canned food. But what's the difference between?
I'm glad you mentioned that, because it's just reiterating the fact that you need a will to be able to survive. You need a will. Yes. So keep that in mind when you're making those underground cities and things like that.
Because a lot of people, they won't want to survive. They just don't want to live. Like, I don't have Facebook. I can't go to drive to work. I can't watch TV. I can't go to McDonald's. Whatever it is, I'm not judging. Whatever it is, they just don't want to live anymore, and they'll die.
You too.
And the difference is that you have to want to live. You have to, and that will allow you to live. And that's the thing that I'm really interested in terms of zombie apocalypse.
Yeah, and for those who don't know, the reason why Jozlyn asked that question, because we didn't talk about it, the fact that you actually write a lot about zombies. Like, your debut novel was Romeo and Juliet versus Zombies, for example.
Yes.
Right? And you've got another more recent novel, which is called Zombie Run. And you also did Santa versus the Zombies. And you do have a little bit of a track record with zombies.
Yes, I love every zombie related thing. My wife has no idea what the hell.
All right. Favorite zombie movie?
28 Days Later.
Okay.
Do you think zombies could be real? Like, coming back to the conspiracy stuff. Oh. No. I mean, like, could it happen? Right? No. Yes. Yes.
I mean,
no.
it could happen. Like, rabies is an example. There are examples of zombie-like viruses in other animal kingdoms. So it could definitely happen. I can't say it couldn't happen, but hopefully it doesn't. That'd be terrible.
Worms in South America.
Yeah, that'd be terrible. Like, they get in the brains and they make the creatures do crazy things, right?
Oh my God. You're just validating my husband's reason why he gets to go to Costco and shop and buy and stock everything up. All the stuff the kids say that they want to eat, and then they stop eating it as soon as you buy it in bulk. So, but we're prepared for the zombie apocalypse.
We're going to live, my family will live off of Spam for a long time. We have a lot of Spam.
That's stuff that stays around for a long time. So.
Yeah, it'll last forever. We'll be on the roof eating Spam for the.
My God.
But, no, my favorite zombie movie. If you haven't seen it, check it out. Train to Busan. Unbelievable.
Love it.
Unbelievable
movie.
That was
a good one.
That's a really good
one. So, Koji, if someone wanted to listen to your show, what's the best way? Where can they find you?
They can find Unofficial Official Story on everywhere you normally listen to podcasts, on Apple Podcast and Spotify and all those great places. Or you could go to our website, the www.unofficialofficialstory.com, and you could get everything there.
And then, Jozlyn, if someone's listened to your show, we showed a little bit of your interview skills, but man, your show is super varied. Like, you talk about all kinds of stuff, and it's like listening to a conversation between people that are really interesting, talking with each other, right? You just come right into it. It's a lot of fun. So how can people find you if they are interested in checking out your show?
Well, apparently we're not going to survive if we don't have a will. Just so I'm going to have to get myself a will. But I have a Nikki, and I have so you can find me. You can find us at keepingupwithchaos.net, and so we're on all the normal podcast platforms. That's a tongue twister. Yeah.
Now, we're going to go ahead and add direct links to all of that stuff on our show notes. So if you're listening to this on the radio and you are looking for the links, just go to skepticmetaphysician.com and you'll see that on their episode page. Just click it. You'll get you a one-stop shop directly to Koji and Jozlyn. Guys, thanks so much for coming on and talking conspiracies with us, because this was so much fun.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
And thank you for coming along on this journey of discovery. We'd love to continue our conversation with you on our website or on Facebook and Instagram under @SkepticMetaphysician. And if you're listening to this on the radio and you missed something, not to worry. All of our shows, including this one, can be found at skepticmetaphysician.com. where you could also watch the videos or even send us an email or voicemail directly from the site. We absolutely love feedback and would appreciate hearing from you. So don't hesitate. Now, we hope you enjoyed this episode as much as we have. It's all for now, but we'll see you on the next episode of The Skeptic Metaphysicians. Until then, take care.
Thank you.